So we were just talking about old rock and roll, like the history of rock. So.
And then, as a result of some of the early players who didn't really even think of the term rock and roll when they were doing it, a lot of branches came off from them. Branches like you were saying, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, heavy metal. Almost every genre out there now comes back to the black players in the 50s, 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Fats Domino. Who else did you say? Chuck Berry?
No, you said Chuck Berry. I said Fats Domino.
Okay.
And go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. That's what I said.
All right. So then there's kind of like 3 stages of rock music. There's rock and roll, which is like Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, then Elvis Presley, and Beatles were kind of shifted into the Beatles are kind of both rock and roll and then hard rock. Hard rock was like next step, like Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, The Who. I've never heard of The Who.
You never heard?
The first time I heard of The Who was I told Alexa to play the Doctor Who theme, and she started playing music from The Who, and I was like, what? So then I was like, Alexa, stop. What is this? So then later, while I was looking for like discs in my dad's CD box, I found The Who, and apparently he really likes The Who, so I'll give it a try. But
The Who was a
that's kind of like the hard rock stuff, and then Ozzy Osbourne, and the Black Sabbath, Metallica, Iron Maiden were kind of like the next stage, which is heavy metal. And there was 2 kinds of heavy metal. There was like the Iron Maiden and Judas Priest type heavy metal, and then there was the thrash metal, which is like Metallica and Slayer. Slayer is actually pretty good.
So is there anything right now that is presently rock related in those fields?
Well, nowadays metal has died because of like radio, and like on the radio they want short songs that are like poppy, that
3 to 4 minute long.
Yeah, so that are like poppy and they aren't even metal. They're just crappy rock songs. And then now we evolved into the stage where pop music with pop music where every song is like yeah, ooh, and repeating like the same verse 3 times and the song ends.
Do you find that to be annoying?
Of course, because
I do too.
Because it's like, okay, I heard this part of the song before. Okay, it's the same exact song. Wait, that was it? Like, I was expecting more. Like, country is the worst kind of rock. I mean, not rock. Country is the worst kind of popular music. Back then, like bluegrass and stuff, country was pretty good, actually. Now, modern country music, I cannot stand it. The voices in it, and it's like, if you got country and mix it with the crappy pop stuff, and you got the worst kind of music ever. But nowadays, the kind of metal that they have is death metal. Death metal is like where they scream and make that growling noise, and you can't understand a word they say, and it has no rhythm at all, and all that. The closest to death metal that's actually good, but isn't quite death metal, is Slipknot. Slipknot, they're pretty good, but
they're kind of on the edge of death metal.
They're kind of on the edge of going from thrash metal to death metal, but they are pretty good.
And when did they come out?
They're recent.
They're recent?
They're recent, I think. I don't know.
Recent in the rock?
Probably like 1990s or something, I have no idea. But nowadays it's just screaming, and I hate that. And now everybody thinks that metal is screaming. I'm like, no.
So everybody wants to always put everything in a box, same box. If it's got the word metal or rock, put it all in the same box. Where that's not true. I don't like screaming either. There was a time when one of the Beatles married a woman named Yoko Ono, and they
I heard about that. I was researching the Beatles today.
And they created an album on the whole other side of an album. One side was songs, on the other side it was just silence. They actually made it so it would be silent. And that was their idea of saying meditation, to just finally get your mind to come to a silence. But they created an album that without a single word on it on one side, which is pretty unique. I don't know if it ever became a big hit or not, I don't even remember. Because she became a sore spot with the Beatles. John Lennon fell in love with her and she aggravated the other members of the band. It caused some problems. But the Beatles introduced what we call the British invasion, where other groups come back behind them and had that kind of same sound. And for the 60s and 70s, that was a big thing, like 20-some years of that.
Yeah, I like rock because there's such a diverse field of it. Like, there's kind of that pop rock, like before Elvis Presley or during Elvis Presley, and then the heavy rock like Led Zeppelin and Rolling Stones and all that, and then there's the heavy metal, which is what I really like, and then there's the death metal, which sucks, but
it's still there.
Yeah.
When I was young, there was two camps. When the Beatles came out, right behind them came the Rolling Stones, and you either were a Beatles fan or a Rolling Stones fan, and the Beatles fan did not like the Rolling Stone kids, and the Rolling Stone kids didn't like the Beatles music, and I was a Rolling Stones. There were a lot more Beatles people than there were Rolling Stones when it first started. Over the years, the Beatles broke up. Their music lasted, but the Stones kept putting out albums for years and years and decades afterwards. They can produce some music.
They're still
kind
going,
of the bluesy
I think.
rock. Yeah, they're the bluesy rock and roll. Their own unique sound. So I was always a Mick Jagger Rolling Stones, and then for a while, and I also liked the Moody Blues, which was sort of a soft rock and roll storytelling thing. And I've always liked them. Even now, like when they come on, I enjoy hearing their music.
Yeah, you like U2.
And U2 has been one that came out after the end of the Beatles, and there was a brief moment of which was called, there was a Sex Pistols. There was another rock sound. And U2 started out that way, and then they kind of shifted gears. So they lost a lot of the anger that was coming out, and then they created their own sound from that. And U2 started as a result. They grew up in a war-torn country. They had a civil war going, well, like a civil war. England was trying to run their country, and they wanted to run their own country. And there was a lot of shootings and killings going on. And the U2 guys grew up in that, and then they wrote music that felt that anger, that frustration of being raised in a country where people were being shot and killed all the time. And then they shifted over a little bit, became more of a quasi-spiritual group. There we go. There we go. So to this day, I still would say I like the Stones when I hear it. I like Supertramp, which was a super group. A lot of people never even heard of them.
What's a super group?
Super groups are the ones that lasted more than just a few years. They went into a decade, 15, 20 years. They produced music that every time they put an album out, or they were on tour, everybody wanted to see them.
I guess that, like Metallica?
Yeah, like today would be like Metallica. Yes.
Well,
to this day, you have a lot of people who want to go see
there's Load, Reload, Saint Anger. Load, Reload, and Saint Anger were the three worst albums of Metallica. Those albums, they got into a phase where they kind of did commercialized stuff, like the song Feel and Memory Remains. It was kind of more rocky. But then the band kind of was getting angry at each other, and they went into a dark phase in Saint Anger. That's why Saint Anger sucked. They had like tin drums. Not like those Indian thingies, but it sounded like they were banging on, like, metal trash cans.
Oh, that's a little bit different.
But it was good, but it was way worse than the original 5 albums that they did.
Gotcha.
And then they did Death Magnetic, and then
they started to soar again.
No, they fell.
Oh.
They fell in Saint Anger, and then they did Death Magnetic, and they were fine. And then they took an 8-year break, and then they made, in 2016 they made, what was it called? Hardwired to Self-Destruct was the new album, and that sounded like their old stuff, and everybody liked it. I actually think it sounds like their old stuff if they were to do it in the modern era, because it kind of sounds new, but not old. Like they did a good job playing like their old stuff, but it kind of sounded newer and more modern than the old stuff. I like the old thrashy stuff. I mean, Spit Out the Bone and all those from the new album are really good, and they do sound like the old stuff, but I think that it sounds a bit more modern. And when I make my music, I want to kind of bring back the thrashy 80s feel.
There you go. 2 things before we go in. Punk rock was a genre I was talking about with U2 came out of. They were early punk rock groups, and then they sort of split and moved from there. The punk rock people got angry that they left, but they created a whole new thing, and there was a new group that came in for that. Number 2 is Supertramp had a saxophone, which is a very unusual. I was never big on the air music. Like there was a group called Chicago where they played a lot of trombones and things like that. But Supertramp had a saxophone player in it, and they mix rock with the sax. So if you get a chance, listen to some of that. It might help you with thinking about that.
What's it called?
Supertramp. Almost all their songs. When I Was Young, Life. Can't think of the name of the Fool. There's a couple things you can look up and you can hear them. I'll send them to you or something like
that. All right. And forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I was going to say I'm only going to do like one song with the trumpet in it, or that kind of R&B, an R&B instrument, a brass instrument. I'm only going to do like one song because I don't think it'll be that good. But I mean,
well, you won't know.
I'll try it.
That's right. You won't know until you try it.
Yeah.
All right, I got 2 questions for you. First question is, when does a person become a criminal? And then the second part of that would be, and then when do they stop being a criminal?
Well, they become a criminal when they do a criminal act, and then they stop being a criminal when they stop doing criminal acts.
So if somebody breaks into your house and steals something, when they walk out of your house, they're no longer a criminal?
No, because they still have the thing that they stole. If they do something bad, then they're a criminal, and then they go in jail, and then when they get out, and then they don't do criminal acts anymore, then they're not a criminal anymore. But if they get out of jail and they still do criminal acts, then they're a criminal. So basically, as long as you're doing criminal acts, you're a criminal.
So, trying to narrow you down then. So somebody commits a crime today, hits somebody, and then goes 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. When do they stop being a criminal? Or is it you have to wait a year? If they don't, what if they never get arrested?
If they hit somebody and do a criminal act like that, well, I don't think, like, kill somebody, I'm going to do that. Kill somebody, not hit somebody, because if you hit somebody, then that's just called fighting.
That's called assault and battery. It's a crime.
What?
That's called assault and battery. If you hit somebody, even if you touch somebody, against their will. If I don't want to be touching, you touch me, take your finger, point
I
me.
thought if
that's
you
a crime.
fight somebody, that's just called getting in a fight.
Nope.
I didn't know that was a crime.
It is a crime.
That's weird.
Yep, you can be arrested. Well, let's say if I jump out and hit that woman in the face.
I mean, if two guys are just getting in like a wrestle or whatever, I mean, that's just two guys getting in a wrestle. But if somebody gets out of the car and randomly punches a woman in the face, I mean, that's just weird.
All right, well, let's say you're standing in school, you're back in public school, and you're standing there, and another kid runs up and just nails you in the face with his fist. You're going to say that, and then you hit him back. Then that's just two kids wrestling or fighting, and it's no crime?
Yeah.
And no, you're wrong. It is a crime. You could charge them with hitting you. Take them to court. That is an assault. Oh, okay, we're going to McDonald's. I just got in the wrong lane. There's another Mickey D's up here.
Oh, we'll try that one
there. All right, let's say middle of the night, somebody comes up with a baseball bat and smacks your father's windshield, smashes it. Nobody
That's vandalizing.
Sees it. It's a crime, right?
Yeah.
So he committed a criminal act. He never gets arrested. When does he stop being a criminal?
I don't know. It's kind of confusing if you're only doing one criminal act.
Suppose he goes out every night, smacks somebody's windshield, but it's 3 in the morning, nobody ever finds out.
That's just being a criminal, doing vandalizing stuff.
Mm-hmm. So you would say he's a criminal.
Criminal.
Even though he's never been arrested.
And if you do a criminal act, and then that's it, then that's just called a criminal act, or vandalizing, or whatever it is. I guess.
Actually, I'm not thinking correctly. Yes, I am. It took me a few seconds to realize where I was. Went to another McDonald's on last week. All right, now suppose you get arrested and you go to court and the judge says 2 days in jail and you go to jail for 2 days. Would he still be a criminal? Now the police officers take his photograph and give him a criminal record.
See, he's a criminal record, but he's not a criminal.
It's not his
He has a criminal record. He's a non-criminal with a criminal record.
Life's pretty complicated, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing. That's what I want you to just think about. We tend to make short, quick decisions on what is and what isn't without taking into account how complicated things are sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it can cause some problems. I used to ask police officers that, and they would be real quick to say, like you, well, when he commits a crime, he's a criminal. All right, well, when does he stop? Geez, I don't know. 1 week, 1 month. Now, they have what's called a statute of limitations, which means if somebody breaks your father's windshield, and within 1 year, we never find out who did it, but 1 year and 1 day later, a day later, we find out who did it, you can't charge them. They said it was too long. That's for most crimes. Murder and rapes and kidnapping, there is no statute of limitations. Real serious crimes.
Yeah.
So you can kidnap somebody when you're 15 and get away with it. You could be 70, and if we catch you, then you can do your time for doing it.
Yeah, I heard something in the news. It was like, that sounded cool. It was like when, like a long time ago, like 1987 or something, there was like a girl and a guy, teenagers, were killed. And there was a DNA sample there.
Which we didn't, back then they hardly knew what a DNA was. But they had part
they
of
had
the evidence.
DNA sample. And now they made a thing of what he would look like, and like at different ages.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and then now they're on the hunt for him now.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know if... I mean, some criminals kill themselves after they do a really bad thing like that.
True. Then they'll never have to go to... They call that, in the police department, abated by death. It ends because of the death of the suspect. Sometimes, let's say 50 years later, and the witnesses are no longer available. They died. Then you can't try them anyway. You still need evidence to convict somebody. So that there's always variables. That's why the first 48 hours is important to find the suspect, lock him up for serious crimes, and then try him as soon as possible while witnesses still have it fresh in their mind, and get them in jail real quick.
All right.
Shall we go in?
Affirmative.
Affirmative?
Yeah. I smelled at McDonald's. They asked for fries. They have some good friggin' fries.